A warm welcome to CP109, Basic Principles of Chemical Engineering. I guess a good place to start this class is by defining what we mean by basic principles of chemical engineering. So before we even do that, let's define what we mean by chemical engineering. So a useful definition is provided by the Institute of Chemical Engineers in their outreach program, Why Not ChemEng? They state that chemical engineering is all about turning raw materials into everyday useful products. Now, while a little bit of an oversimplification, that is generally quite a good definition to start our journey. So what then are the basic principles of chemical engineering? Well, let's think about that definition. If we have raw materials that we wish to transform into everyday useful products, or perhaps just useful products, well, what will that entail? Perhaps we will have to move our raw materials around. Perhaps we'll have to react our raw materials to form those useful products, or perhaps even create intermediary products before we get to our final product. We may have to even mix some of our raw materials together in order to achieve that. So you might conclude then that basic principles of chemical engineering involves the material quantities or material amounts that we have to deal with, how much we have. And you would be half right. There is another important concern for chemical engineers, and that is of energy. Now, even if we mixed our raw materials together, our reactants, reactions don't necessarily always spontaneously happen. We may have to raise the temperature to see any significant reaction. We may have to lower our temperature to ensure that no spoiling of our useful products occurs. We may have to even try to separate some of our unreacted material from our product. So, being able to determine the energy of a system and control the energy is another important concern for chemical engineers. So, if we have an amazing new innovative process, a new chemical reaction, but it requires the energy input equivalent to the sun, we're probably not going to get very far. So these two, material and energy, are the main concerns and the basic principles of chemical engineering. And they culminate to the concept of material and energy balances. So in this class, we will cover a whole host of sub-concepts that relate to material and energy balances, including compositions, stoichiometry, thermochemistry, enthalpy and enthalpy pathways, en route to achieving our goal of being good and adept at material and energy balances, the bread and butter of chemical engineering. By the end of this class, you will have a firm understanding of the basic principles of chemical engineering.